Okay, so we should be live at this point. So I'll get started. Hello and welcome to our What's New webinar series. This has been designed to take you through the changes that have been made to Colleague as part of our latest release. That's 24.0702. That release was deployed over the course of last weekend. So this session will basically run through the development release notes of that build, and also I'll mention about some things that we're currently working on as well in the latest release. If you have any queries during the course of the session, there'll be a Q&A that's available within Teams to put forward your questions. If you can keep the queries relevant to the session, i.e. based on the features that are being shown, that would be ideal. And the session obviously is being recorded. Subscribers of the What's New series will be sent a copy of the session afterwards. We also post it up on social media as well. So I close that down, and if we just go through the basics, ultimately off the back of the release going out at the weekend, when users log in on Monday, they'd have seen a notification. And that will just advise them that they've been upgraded, and that here's a link to the release notes. And then you click on that, and obviously it takes you to the release notes for July. You can also get to it by just going to the help icon here. You click on that, and then effectively you have the current release, top left-hand side, which will always be the very latest release there, and then you'll have a link to it as well. You've also got the summary video that again we send out on social media as a quick kind of run through of the changes with a bit of music behind it. It's kind of a short sort of 3-minute video, whereas this is obviously a bit more of an in-depth session. But here you can obviously click on that, and again it will take you to the same release notes, and obviously get updates on a monthly basis with whatever is the new release that's gone out. In terms of the highlights of this build, the suggested candidates feature and requirements was our kind of main development piece that we worked through, and there's been ultimately a number of other items as well that we worked through, mainly obviously on the basis of client feedback, but suggested candidates was a key feature for the build. So to go through how this functionality works, if I just go over to a requirement and just explain through what it's doing. So what it used to be here as an option here was a feature called search for candidates, and that would basically, when run, just take you over to the candidate search, pulling over some requirement info into the candidate search, but ultimately you do your search from within the candidate search, and then you pull that data back to the requirement. It was a bit, in terms of from a navigation perspective, you leave the requirement, go off to the search, and then come back afterwards. So what we wanted to do was make it workflow that is just within the requirements, and ultimately does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of building a Boolean string automatically, and ultimately refining the records for you to be able to look at within the requirement and then long list from there. So a while ago we added in, against the job description, we added in the ability to scan notes, and that's an ability basically for it to scan through whatever job description you've put within there, and for it to just advise the skills that it's been able to find within the job description. So what we've done as a sort of a natural extension to that now is when you're running the suggested candidates functionality, it's scanning this job description. It's finding all of the points, all of the skills that it's finding within the job description, and then it's building a Boolean string. It's searching the candidates' CVs for candidates that are relevant to the job, and then it's bringing the results back, and then you can obviously filter those results based on their location, so based on their proximity to the requirement address. So if I just demonstrate it, if I click on suggested candidates here, you obviously get an overview, and then it brings back the records that it's been able to find, sorted by rank order as a key point, but ultimately listing back a load of records. Now what you can then do is filter it to say maybe we only want records that are within a certain proximity of the address, say within 10 miles, fairly common. And obviously the rank score is there to give you an idea of how viable that candidate is. based on obviously the Boolean search that was put together on the skills associated with the requirement. But from there, obviously, you can select the records that have been found. And you can choose to view their documents. Again, similar functionality to what you have on the search. You can obviously see their CV within this area. You can switch it to view text, and that switches it to a plain text view and allows you to see the actual specific times where it mentioned a certain skill set that's known related to this job description within the candidate's CV. Again, giving you some context on the relevance of the candidate and whether or not they're viable. But yeah, effectively you can switch that back and move through the records, obviously viewing their CV in terms of the original documentation you have against their record, but then also if you want swapping it to view text and obviously seeing the specific hits that are found within their document. As well as that, you can obviously use the summary view as well. So the summary view is there to pull out some record information on the right hand side, and then from there, obviously, that gives you access to that candidate's skills as a key example, but also the candidate history, should I say, the skills, ability to create history there, obviously their telephone number, and if you wanted to go from there in terms of going into their record, obviously the options there to do that as well. But effectively the idea is to obviously review the records, establish which ones you think are viable, and then from there tick the ones you want and hit long list. Select OK there. It will warn you if they've previously worked there before for that company, but otherwise it will long list the candidates as you'd expect it to. And then give you a confirmation message, and then from the candidates table you can obviously see those candidates have now been long listed. If I go back to here again, if you run it again against the record, you'll see that the records that have previously been long listed have now been filtered out of the search result because obviously they're already against the requirement. So it does that for you. If you wanted to go off to the candidate search and do that, the option to do that is still there. It's still available for you via the advanced search. So that's these options here where you can do a skills-based search only, or a postcode search, or a text and search as well, or you could do the whole lot. So that was the advanced search function, and obviously if you run that again, it will go off to the candidate search and perform that function there. But that's the suggested candidates functionality as it currently stands. We have had obviously feedback from people using it, and we're already refining it based on that feedback. So obviously we deliver this based on our testing and our concept in terms of how it can be used, and obviously it goes out into the real world. You give us your real world feedback in terms of when you're using it, what you expect, and how the results that you've seen, and we refine it from there. So obviously the functionality works as it does currently, but you can expect to see it obviously evolve as well to add more functionality and perform better as well over the coming weeks. So that's the suggested candidates functionality, which has obviously been deployed. The next item along is the type option. So the type option has been added to the whenever basically you look up a company record in the system, either through a lookup partial view or from the company selection view, the type option has been added now. So if you wanted to filter on your search, that only brings up customers, for example, or third parties, or suppliers. The option is there to do that now, whereas before obviously it wasn't there. So now we've added that type there. There isn't really much more to add than that, really. Obviously the type field is available on the company record, and this is a customizable lookup, but on the type field you'll have your drop down list of different options, and it's a multi-selection as well, so it can be a company can have multiple types. But yeah, effectively, if you've categorized your companies in types, you can now look them up. The key scenario this was being requested for was the scenario of obviously only wanting to find umbrellas that you are working with in the system. Previously, it was a little bit more harder to do that, whereas now that obviously gives you a quick way of generating a list of all the umbrellas in the system. Also, what we've done as well is in the instance of looking up a contact in the system. So if you go to a contact lookup, you'll see that we've added company name into there. So previously we had company ID, but company name is obviously an easier option for users. So what you can do is obviously type in a company, hit enter, and then the company, the contact results list will be a list of all the people associated with whatever you've typed into there. And that obviously then just helps with the contact selection. So those are two options that we've done with regards to the type for company lookup and selection. Next one along, which is quite an important point, is to do with the calendar. Let me just check we've not got any queries. No, we haven't. Okay. So yeah, on the calendar side of things, so this is the ability to hide private calendar entries. So effectively on the, close down these tabs here, if I go to the home page, so what you obviously have within both the calendar and the daily planner is an ability obviously to view your 365 calendar entries fully synchronized with obviously a 365 calendar. However, what's become apparent is that users aren't comfortable with their calendar entries always being viewable no matter what. So we've made a couple of changes. One change is, and that this is fixed regardless of any settings, is that when you view any of your users' calendar items, any private entries will be hidden automatically whether you set for yours to be seen on your own record or not. But if I just explain how this works, obviously in this scenario we've got a few calendar entries, but we've got a couple in here that are a little bit personable. So if we go over to Outlook and we select one of these calendar entries, for example, you'll notice that there's an option here called private. So if I switch that to private or just click on that, should I say, and then hit save, you'll notice that it's got a little padlock there, and I'll do the same for this one as well. If I switch that to private and hit save there, again you'll notice that that's now got a padlock. And what that basically just means is that when you're on the calendar in the system, or when you're on the daily planner on the system, if I refresh that, the items, you'll notice that they've been filtered out now. You can't see those. So effectively it allows the daily planner to basically be a work schedule if you'd rather it just filter out everything, or you can choose to have the private entries still be visible in here. That's all done from a user setting. So if we go over to user settings, and within here, if we select the calendar, you notice there's an option here called filter out private calendar entries in calendar and daily planner. So I've got that set to yes, which is why the calendar entries that I set to private were filtered out. If I had set that to no, then obviously those calendar entries would still be visible. And obviously there's a global setting for just, across the board as a principle in terms of that setting. So that option is there as a global setting and as a user setting to choose whether or not to filter out private entries in your calendar. So that's that one. The next one along was to do with timesheets, basically importing timesheets with regards to purchase order numbers. So obviously the ability has been there for a while now to be able to import timesheets into the system, and that effectively saves on kind of bulk uploads and bulk importing. If I go to an example placement, so the scenario is obviously that you've got multiple placements and the timesheets that you're receiving in relation to those placements, if you're not using the portal, you're receiving those through sort of spreadsheets that you're getting. Effectively, if you wanted to then import those timesheets against the associated placements, what you can then do is within the back office area, there's a section in the back office area called import timesheets here. So you click on that, And then from there, you've obviously got an ability to then import the timesheets. So for the timesheets to be imported, they need to be in a specific format. So for that, we've got a sample spreadsheet that is provided, and that gives you basically the details of what you can import. So you can download that spreadsheet. But if I demonstrate how this works, obviously it's I've got a spreadsheet that's prepared here. Just open up that. It's a spreadsheet that's here. That's for a timesheet. For this placement here, 1037, which is our example placement here, 1037, and basically it's the same as the details are the same as they've been before, but the extra option that's been added is this PO number. So effectively, providing you have a column called PO number in how you're seeing here, all with a space between the PO and the number. It supports that as well, but basically your PO number will be imported with your timesheet, and yeah, what that effectively means is if the purchase order number already exists against the placement, it just allocates that purchase order number to the placement, and if the purchase order number doesn't exist against the placement, then it creates a new purchase order number, a new placement purchase order number for that timesheet. So just to demonstrate it, if I was to select this now, I'll select our timesheet, we'll import that, and then that's confirmed that one timesheet is imported successfully, and then I'll need to refresh the placement. And on the timesheets tab, you'll notice that I've now got another PO, and obviously another timesheet, and the timesheet's been added obviously with that purchase order number allocated to it. If I was to go to the purchase order numbers area of the placement, you'll see that obviously that purchase order was imported. So yeah, effectively there isn't much more to it than that really. It's importing that that purchase order number, and that's the same for importing charges as well. We've updated the import charges functionality also. So again, you can import a purchase order number with your charge. There is another option in here too of our Sage integration, but I don't have access to Sage, so that's not something I'm going to be able to demonstrate. But effectively, yeah, the purchase order number that is generated against the placement allocated to the timesheet and then pulls through into the invoice record when you're generating invoices within the back office area. That's then can now be pulled through into Sage as well. So it sort of completes that scenario of associated purchase order numbers with timesheets automatically for the importing process, and then obviously putting them through into Sage. The next item along was to do with additional fields for the Marcus Lever process. So if I demonstrate this by going to a contact, and effectively what we've got really is, yeah, we've added some extra fields to the Marcus Lever process. So Marcus Lever is that scenario of a contact that you have at a business moving to another company, and you ultimately wanting to copy over their details to another to a record to another company, rather than having to start from scratch, create a new contact against that new company record they've gone to. So this functionality is available from the right-click menu, Marcus Lever, or from the View More menu. You've got Marcus Lever there. You click on that option, it asks if you want to move them to a company, and yeah, and effectively you'll notice that we've added secondary email address has been added there. Direct phone number has been added there, and also copy mail shot status has also been added as well. We're going to put these into 2 columns at the moment. It's a bit of a longer list, but yeah, for the time being it will look as it does, but you'll notice that it switches over to 2 columns soon because this list is obviously getting longer and longer. But effectively it will work by yeah, you select the company that person's gone to, you put a reason, just moved company, and then you can choose obviously to the copy all, which will just select everything, or you can choose to what you specifically want to copy relating to that contact, and then if you hit yes there, obviously archives off this contact as a leaver and then creates a new contact at the company they've moved to, but obviously copies over the details, the extra details that we've set. There is also functionality that we'll be doing as well as part of development work that's going on at the moment, and that's to do with when you're linking a contact to a candidate. If you're creating a new candidate record, we're going to have a similar sort of workflow to the markers lever workflow when you're creating a candidate from a contact record. Again, just so the details can be copied over automatically without having to again just retype and re-enter data. But that will come in another release. But that's been done obviously in terms of this build, the additional field info. Another thing we've done is to do with the login process. This one can't really be demonstrated, but yeah, effectively, when logging into Colleague, it will check with the 365 tenant on consent, on admin consent, on rights. And you'd have known that when obviously you first logged into Colleague, it requested permissions to your 365 account. There's just some extra admin settings that are also at play there as part of that login process, which we've accounted for now. And yeah, effectively that users really won't see any difference, to be honest. They'll just log in as they did before. But in some scenarios where certain admin consent from settings are being applied to the 365 account, it will take those into account now as well. Another enhancement point that we delivered on was the Bob Check report. So the Bob Check as a service essentially will monitor your all the instances when you've put a candidate forward for a role, they've not then been placed in that role, and it just sort of monitors their activity over the coming months to make sure that they then don't get employed by that business, and obviously, you know, that you then miss out on that finder's fee, that margin that you're entitled to. So BobCheck is a service. You can access obviously their website from here as well, but yeah, ultimately you're required to set up an account with these guys. But effectively, from Colleague's side, we've now have a standard report. You'll find this within report maintenance. It's called BobCheck Extract, and effectively what you can do is click on that option, choose a date range for, you know, when you submitted candidates forward for various different roles. Choose whether or not you've put them forward for either contract roles or permanent roles. I'll select permanent, and then you can obviously default that as well if you want. Hit update, and it just gives you a list of those candidates with the field data that BobCheck want to see. And then from there, obviously, you can just click export, goes off into that CSV, and then you just send that detail onto BobCheck, and they work from there with that info. So it's all there, standard within Colleague now for anyone who wants to use BobCheck. Ultimately, you can just use this report with that for either perm or obviously contracts. You know, for candidates that you've put forward for roles, and obviously if they've not been placed and they do get placed there at a later date, obviously BobCheck will make you aware of that, and you can obviously then seek those that finder's fee. Some minor UI stuff as well. I mean, effectively the formatted CV, the work history table, and the education table. There's an extra carriage return in there that was unwanted, which has been removed now from that formatted CV. It's not really something worthy of demo in reality, but we obviously just refine our formatted CV function based on feedback, so that's been done. And the last point was on recent items, lists, and quick search. We're looking at placements, and specifically when you're seeing an email address. So as an example, if I go to recent items, and if we were looking at a placement, for example, the idea within recent items is that any email address is a link to the email form. So if you wanted to click on that, it launches the email form. Previously, for placements, that is, if you clicked on that email address, it would open up the placement. So it's obviously now been updated so that it works as it should do in terms of, again, you click on an email, it launches the email form, so you can send an email to that person, and that's the way it should work. It obviously uses the associated merge fields related to the entity. So when you click on for a placement, if you click on a candidate email address, you're sending an email to that candidate, but the merge fields that you have available are the permanent, sorry, the placement orientated merge fields. So that's the release for July. And obviously there was some bug fixing as well, as there always is, just refining things based on feedback and issues raised. And we keep working through obviously any points that are raised back with support. They filter through into development. Obviously we refine the product to resolve those issues for you. And yeah, effectively in terms of our current sprint, there's a few things that are happening at the moment in our current sprint. To give you a heads up on one of them, we've done an ordnance survey integration, and that's going to enable the ability to be able to enter a postcode and look up an address automatically, and then select that address, and okay, and there'll be kind of instructions on how that's set up. So that's kind of a heads up on the August release. That's one of the features we've already done will be that postcode lookup for the survey. But obviously this was a session about the July release, which are the points that we've gone through there. No Q&A, no questions as far as I can gather. So that's that effectively. Thank you very much for your time. Those are the points for the build. Again, this will be posted up on social media. It'll be posted up or sent to people attending our subscribers to the What's New webinar. And see you next time. Thanks for your time. Take care. Bye bye.